just have a quick re-reminder about just to let you know, I'm not a neuroscientist, I'm just a midwife that's done a lot of really specialised in birth trauma, and this is an incredibly interesting thing. But if any of you would like to contribute or have an opinion about this, please put up your hands. But let's just have a quick revision of the brain structure, which you've probably learned when you were training. Because the brain, as we know, is a bit of a hodgepodge. It's as evolution and millions of years have gone past, the brain's been a bit like a house that's been added onto as more rooms have been needed. So if we look down the bottom here we've got the reptilian hindbrain, which mediates all the things to keep your heart going at the right speed and your lungs to go and your toenails to grow and your eyes to do what they do. It all functions down there below the level of consciousness. And then as animals got more sophisticated and the mammals came along in evolution, they needed more capacity in their brain. And so what they added on was this bit up here, which is called the limbic part of the brain. And that's the bit I really want us to focus in on this afternoon, because that's where all the latest neuroscience about trauma is being understood from. And then, as the brain got more sophisticated for mammals, and obviously for us, we've got the biggest brains of all the animal kingdom, we added on across the top, all those coloured bits, the neocortex, which is the only bit of the brain that we are aware of and conscious of, and that's where all of our thinking and our rationality and our logic and our wisdom and some of our memories are kept. It's where vision and hearing happen, and that is the only bit that we are conscious of. All the other bits are ticking away underneath the surface. So let's have a quick look. Going a little bit further now, I want to revise with you again. I don't quite have forward this properly. I think I'm okay now, I've got it right. So I want us to look at some of the latest neuroscience about trauma. And trauma is something that isn't just to do with midwifery or birth, it's across all sorts of modalities. So this is some of the stuff around the fight or flight mechanism that you will all know about. And what I call this ladder is the trauma ladder, because at the bottom we've got us all in this room, hopefully, ticking along with our levels of fight or flight hormones fairly low, except mine probably. But we want to be, when we're not on the trauma ladder, we're calm, we're grounded, we're functioning well, we're happy, we're relating well to our friends and family, we're engaged with the world and with what's going on, and we're resilient. I love that word, because it means that as the pushes and pulls of life come, we all are going to have good and bad things happen. People are going to die, the cat's going to die, somebody's going to have an operation, we're going to have weddings and marriages and babies. As those pushes and pulls on our lives come, we get stressed, we go up, our fight or flight hormones come up a bit, but if we're healthy, they don't go up to the top of the trauma ladder. We're resilient and we're able to manage them and come down a ladder. And those memories are appropriately plugged into the right places in our brain so that we can apply our wisdom to them, and we know where those events happen in time and place. So then, if we look at things going up the trauma ladder, as the fight or flight hormones are being kicked in, let's say we're going up the ladder and our bodies are very, very, very wanting us to prevent us from any physical harm. If there's a obstetric slap, if there's a lion coming, if a bus is going to run over, if that's going to shoot me, I'm going to start to get neurological arousal and I'm going to start to produce all these fight or flight hormones. Now let's look what people do when that happens. Let's say you've got neurological arousal. You've had someone give you a bit of a whack. Open your legs, get the baby out. What people will do will become defensive to start with. They'll be starting to go, shivers, I better be careful, this is a dangerous person, I better watch out, get all of it amped up. If you're going up the fight side of things, people get irritated and frustrated, pissed off, like, what's going on, who's that, I don't like them. And then as the amygdalic or neurological arousal comes up, People on the left-hand side tend to go quiet. Interesting. You don't get people who are fairly high up a trauma ladder being very vocal, and we'll look at that of why soon. And then as they go further up that ladder, that's where huge panic will kick in. And on the other side, on the fight or flight side, people will get angry and they'll get up into being hugely rageful. And that's when you've got the hormones where you want to punch someone or kick them, and you've got all of that system ready for a big fight. And so when we get up to the top of the ladder, I don't think you can read that very well, but at the top, when people have got a full fear response going on, we've got freezing. You know, when people get a sudden fright, well, we say in New Zealand, you're looking like an opossum in the headlights. Do you know what I mean? Do you have antelopes in the headlights? But that, people are frozen, can't move, stuck. They become speechless. We lose access to our language and our words when we're at the top of this ladder. We dissociate, and dissociation is something for us to really understand, because what happens is women in a birth situation can't run out of the room. They're not going to punch you, hopefully, and so they're stuck with how do they protect their organism from the scary, scary thing that's happening. So what humans can do is what we call dissociate. And it means that they literally move their consciousness out of their brains. And I had a woman who had it. I'll give a quick example. She had been raped as a 19-year-old, and when she felt the baby's head come down onto her pelvic muscles, it reminded her of what she'd felt when she was raped. And she had nowhere to go with that ghastly feeling, so she dissociated. And then she wouldn't push because she got no access to her brain at that point. Her brain is trying to keep her alive. And the midwives are yelling at her, push, push, come on, you need to get your baby out. And the more they got agitated, the more she dissociated. And then the fetal heart went right down, so the midwives got really agitated. Come on now, Susie, you have got to get this baby out. The fetal heart's going, boof, boof. Come on, get this baby out. Come on, give a big push to me now, come on. Boof, boof, boof. And she's left her brain. It's dissociation. And people will do it as a survival mechanism, as a response to fear and trauma. People will shake. It's a big, you often see people when they're going into theatre shaking, and that is a kick in from the hindbrain to try and reset the body neurologically. My dog, when it thunders, has got a whole body shake going on. And we've got another mechanism that the body will kick in at this point, which is called transitory psychosis, which means that when trauma levels are so high, people can behave in a psychotic way. And I felt it once when I felt my daughter was lost in Mexico. For about 3 days, it was looking like she had disappeared off the planet. And I was behaving like a mad woman. I was irrational, I was unpleasant, I couldn't get off my phone or my computer trying to work out what had happened, and I was behaving in a psychotic way because my fight or flight hormones had been pushed up to the top of the ladder. So, what's interesting about this for midwives? Let's just have a quick work through on this. I think what also is really good to notice on this thing is when women particularly will go up the side of the ladder of the flight or fawn, and when they're up there, what you can see is that people will become very, very quiet. And you notice that when women are very, very quiet and they're very, very fearful when they're giving birth, if they are, then that quietness is often misconstrued as consent. They're quiet and they are fawning. Yes, doctor, what do you think you should do? I just want a healthy baby. They are colluding, and it's difficult for us to get this right, because when people are right up the top of the ladder up there, in that quiet, shocked, fawning space, it's very hard to deal with, to bring them down again. And we're going to talk about the skills of bringing people down this ladder in a minute. But one of the things that you will be looking for if people are quiet and at the top of the ladder is for dissent. Is there any no you have? What questions would you like to ask? They probably won't be able to answer you, but you could try. Okay, so let's just look now at this is some of the really latest neuroscience coming in around what is trauma. And I really like a couple of these quotes here. There's this guy called Bercelli who says, "We do not have to have experienced physical danger to have long-term symptoms of trauma. Unpleasant social or emotional events can elicit the same responses." So what we now know, and this is I think the very crux of why we're all here today, is that we can put people up the top of the trauma ladder by what can be called violent communication or psychological trauma. And there's a guy called Marshall Rosenberg, let me just get this quote coming here. He talks about that we know that people can be so traumatized, not by physical worries, but by psychological worries when we look at people who've suicided. They have become so overwhelmed with trauma, with what's going on in their brain. They're at the top of the ladder, and their big flight out is to kill themselves because of the emotional pain they're feeling. So we know very much that the body only has one mechanism for managing trauma, whether it be physical harm or it be psychological harm. And this guy Bercelli again has said that with the development of our neocortexes, the human species is capable of experiencing death in two ways. Physical death, which we're always careful about our physical bodies, and psychological death. And I'm going to read another quote because I can't do any better than these experts. And there's a guy called Marshall Rosenberg who has led the non-violent communication movement in the world, which has made huge contributions to our understanding of how we communicate. And what he says is, if violence means acting in ways that bring hurt or harm to others or to myself, then much of how we communicate can be considered violent communication. When we judge others, when we bully, when we have racial bias, when we have "I like you because of my skin colour, or you're from my village, or you're part of my group," or "I don't like you because you're the wrong colour, or the wrong religion, or you've got HIV, or you're fat," or whatever it is that we judge other people about, it will be, Marshall Rosenberg, would call this violent communication. He also says when we blame, when we finger point, anything that has anybody get onto that trauma ladder as feeling not okay will be kicking off that whole fight or flight response. What else does he say? He says lack of privacy, which we've talked about this morning, when there's inequitable attention. So I've got Tekla here, who I understand, and she's from my friend basis, and she's coming in labour. I give her lots of attention. And we've got, who have we got over here? What's your name? Rita. Rita over here. Rita. So we've got Rita over here, and she's come in labour, and she's 19, unmarried, smelly, not of my group, and I don't give her the same amount of attention as I give Tekla. And Marshall Rosenberg would say that is violence, and it's psychological violence, will put people equally up to the top of the trauma ladder as being bitten by a lion. So, where does that leave us? The thing that I think is interesting about this is we've got in our societies, if I take to Sheena or Rita with a stick and whack you and hurt you, or if I run over you, or if I nick your uterine artery and cause you physical harm, we have a whole lot of policies and laws and legislations and pathways to deal with my bad behaviour. But if we kick someone up to the top of the trauma ladder by psychological harm, we don't. And this is what the big thing we need to do in midwifery now, is to find policies and pathways and legislations to deal with the bully, the rude midwife, the slapping midwife, the excluding midwife. We need to find equal pathways to deal with that. So what I'd like to, are you all okay with this? Everybody surviving this? You're not on the ladder? Okay, so what I'd like to do is just take a closer look at the amygdala. And the amygdala is because if we as midwives understand its workings, we will be so much more aware of what's going on. So the amygdala is this fantastic little organ that's in a little wad of neurons right in the middle of the limbic part of the brain in there. And what its job is basically to keep us safe. And in it are all the memories of attachment. So in the first 1,000 days, when you were being grown up by your parents, your amygdala was being, the neural pathways in your amygdala were being very set. So this is why if Lucy Cello has some sort of life incident, she will respond to it in one way, and if Rita, who I know her name over here, has the same incident, she will respond in a different way, because their amygdalas have been set up and wired from their childhood to respond in certain ways. So we know about the amygdala, that it's there to store all your childhood memories of how you and your family deal with things. It is also there to store your emotional memories over a lifetime, and to keep and store all your trauma history as well. And as inputs from the environment come in, everything's run through the amygdala first, before you're even conscious of it. Now the amygdala is fantastic. It's like the sneaky organ that the whole time is trying to keep you safe. And it's like a little lighthouse like this. It's looking around, you're not aware of this. And it's going, oh, is she a bad person? Is she from a bad tribe? I don't know, she might be hurting me. Is that a lion over there? Is that bus going to run over me? Is that chair going to fall over? And all the time, below the level of consciousness, the amygdala is searching the environment to keep you safe. It doesn't care much if you're happy. It's all the time looking around, and even before you're aware of it, it will kick in the whole flight or fight response if it thinks it's necessary. Important for us to know this, because it really comes into play at birth. So, yep, and then, okay, so let's just carry on, we'll come back to this in a minute. So let's just have a look. When the amygdala becomes, let's grab a clicker. When we've got amygdalic arousal, the amygdala has picked up something's dangerous. That midwife said something rude to me. And the amygdala's going, alarm, something's going wrong here. And what does it do? It sends out, through the anterior pituitary, a big hormonal whoosh. And it's going to send down to your adrenal glands, which are little glands tucked in the fatty part, in the front of the fatty part of your kidneys. It will send down a message to your adrenal glands, come on guys, get going. And the adrenal glands will send out a whole lot of adrenaline, noradrenaline, and for a different pathway, cortisol. And that puts the whole body into a fight or flight setup. And we've got the alarms going off. This will happen before the person is actually conscious of it. And what happens then? One of the big things that those fight or flight hormones will do is suppress the neocortex. So that person's access to their ability to sort stuff out logically, to their wisdom, to their words, will be really, really inhibited. So their whole thinking part of their brain is inhibited, and you've got pretty well the amygdala in control now. It's going, I don't care about what you're having for dinner, or how your child is, or what that dog's doing. It's going, I just need to keep Jude alive. There's no point talking to them. They are way beyond understanding words. And we're going to talk about how to talk to them, how to be with people when they are up there in a minute. Other things that people will do when they've got this huge amygdalic arousal is they will become frozen like a springbok. So when I was up at your beautiful Etosha Park last week, we're looking at all the springbok babies, and they're the cutest little animals, and we know, and humans have this response as well, that if the springbok baby is going to be caught by a lion, what the springbok baby knows to do is freeze. And the lion will walk right past that baby and not eat it. As soon as the springbok loses its bravery and goes for a sprint, the lion will have it and he'll be deady bones. And humans do the same. We have this freeze response, as Anne told us with her woman here. We will freeze because we are at the top of the trauma ladder. And this is what midwives need to remember and see and go, golly, this woman's in big trouble. We need to really all get in here quickly. In neuroscience, it's called tonic immobility. To us, it's freezing. People will become numb. Anne used that word. We know that numbness, that sort of shocked numbness. People will lose their ability to speech, to have words, and they will dissociate. And what is happening then is when women are like Anne's woman, you've got all of the fight or flight hormones are on full rev. And it's like a car. You've got your foot on the accelerator, but you've got your foot on the brake at the same time because the parasympathetic system has gone, stroke, this woman's in trouble. Let's send out some oxytocin and activate our dopamine pathways. Let's bring her down. So it's like the brain, like a car, like a Blue Racer's car, has got the foot on the accelerator, the foot on the brake, the wheels going, and there's fire and dust going everywhere. And it's exactly the same in the human's brain. It's got parasympathetic, sympathetic nervous system on full wash, and she's completely stuck.